This is Rabbi Aaron Boxt back again with my podcast for this week. There will be a brief recess, if you will, time off after this week until the middle of October for the High Holy Days. So there will be no podcast between now and then. I will be doing some writing, and so you'll see some writing online, but no podcast until mid-October. What I want to talk about today, though, is it's weighing heavy on my mind. You know, there are some times when you wake up and the day just feels like it's going to be long. The day just feels like it's heavy. And sometimes it's just, that's because the way life is. But other times, like today, for example, the weight on my brain, the weight in my mind, the weight on my literally almost a physical weight being felt by me today is of course a reflection of September 11th and that horrifically awful day in American history, which we commemorate today, the anniversary, and we remember all of those who died in those tragic events, but also we also remember all of those who died for our freedom since. But also with the political assassination of Charlie Kirk yesterday and all of the aftermath from that. And look, I don't want to get into an argument or a discussion with people about whether he was a good person or a bad person. It really doesn't matter. You know, he said some very hateful things to people, and you know, I'm certainly not denying that, but in our country, and I believe the way it should be in the rest of the world, a person should not be killed for their opinions. Even as flagrant and as provocative and somewhat offensive as some of his comments may have been, he was still a human being who deserved the right to not be murdered. And not just in the way that he was murdered, but he should not have been murdered, period. You know, you could vehemently disagree with somebody, but that doesn't give you the right to murder someone. So I'm not going to celebrate his death. I'm not going to celebrate his murder. I'm not going to get into that, but I will recognize that he was a human being who had the same rights as everybody else, the right to live. But then, of course, tonight I'm taking my congregation, or members of my congregation, to see the movie Guns N' Moses, which is a movie that literally speaks about a rabbi, or teaches about a rabbi as a result of anti-Semitic behavior, or as a result of threats on his community, becomes a gun owner, becomes someone who defends his people. And I 100% agree with the rights of gun ownership. Forgetting the fact that it's in the Bill of Rights. Yeah, it's one of the it's an amendment, but still, I believe people should have the rights to own a gun. I also believe that there should be much more severe gun laws, but again, I'm not going to get into that argument. But what I am going to say in reference to this is a shooting this week, several shootings this week, if you obviously need to include the school shootings in Denver and the school shooting in Minnesota last week, and any number of the school shootings that have happened in the last year or many years, plus of course the assassination of the Minnesota congresswoman and her husband, and the attack on another congressperson. Look, it's a violent cycle. Hate begets hate begets hate begets hate. Violence begets violence, and so on and so forth. And that is not the answer. It's very clear what the answer is. In the Ten Commandments, it says, Lo tirtzach, thou shalt not murder. Perhaps that's too hard for some people to understand, but that is pretty clear. And the message, in my opinion, the overall message in the Bible, the overall message of Christianity, of Islam, and of many, many, many of the world's religions is V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Either love your neighbor as you love yourself, or what is hateful to you, do not do to your neighbor, if you want to quote Hillel, Rabbi Hillel. But the point of the matter is hate, violence. This is not the answer. And unfortunately, this has become the answer for so many people in this country. Not just in the world, but in this country. We have a real problem. Some people will blame guns. Some people will blame this. Some people will blame that. I believe it's hate. It's hatred, which is driven by more hatred. And I don't want to talk about where it started and who started it, because it doesn't matter, because it comes from both sides. It comes from all sides. Forget Democrat, Republican. It comes from all sides, all aspects of our society. I mean, think about this. You're driving down the road and someone cuts you off. You get angry. You honk your horn. And then there's a threat of, well, maybe that person's going to get out of their car and come beat you up or try and get into a fight with you. The horn on the car was designed to be a warning. Like if someone's about to get injured or whatever. It wasn't meant to be a divisive a mechanism that causes hate. But that is what it has become in our country. It's terrifying. And now with Charlie Kirk's murder yesterday, there are people out there who are saying that anyone in the spotlight, anyone in the public eye now should feel threatened and should feel worried. Is that the kind of world that we want to live in, where people are afraid to express their opinions? People are afraid to be who they are? And no, I'm not just referring to one particular aspect of community, of society, I mean, think about if you're an LGBTQIA plus member of that community. How long have you had to hide yourself out of fear of being who you are? And that also is because of hate. People hate differences. People hate when they don't understand. I think the message should be, look, love first. And if someone is hateful to you, don't turn their hate back on them. Love them back. We're going to have disagreements. We're all different. But that doesn't mean we have to hate and kill and get violent in our responses. The fact of the matter is, if we just sat down and just tried to and listened, and just listened. And I will say, I've watched a number of Charlie Kirk videos. And yes, there are some out there where they're pretty provocative, where he has gotten very loud and anxious and reactive to people. But the majority of his videos are of him disagreeing with people, but hearing them in a way that's more respectful than not. And by no way, shape, or form am I saying that I agree with anything he's ever said. As a matter of fact, I disagree with him I disagreed with him on many aspects of what he believed. But he still had the right to say it, and I believe he would have sat down with me and said I have the right to argue with him. But that's okay. At the end of the day, we can still shake hands and walk away. We may not agree with each other, but we don't hate each other. We may not love each other, but we don't hate each other. So that's the message today. Don't love if you can't. That's fine. But don't hate either. If you disagree, have a conversation. Listen to the other. You don't have to agree with them, but listen. Try to understand. And if you still disagree, that's fine. Shake hands and walk away in disagreement. But you're not hating each other. You're respecting and honoring the other. And their right and ability to disagree with you. And that's okay. Everyone should just take a deep breath and just let things be. Was free will a mistake by God to give us? I don't know. I don't think so. But I think it means just we have to work harder, much harder than we are, to learn to listen and not hate. Amen.